Now, from the Pope John Paul II Cultural Center in Washington, D.C., Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome to The World Over Live. We have a fantastic show for you this evening. Some stem cell breakthroughs to report, and it appears embryonic stem cell research is falling out of favor in California, of all places. Father Tad Paholczyk of the National Catholic Bioethics Center will be here to discuss. We'll also talk about the National Prayer Breakfast that took place in D.C. this week. Wait until you hear some of these comments. And later, we'll remember the great philosopher, mystery writer, and professor, Ralph McInerney, who passed away last week. Before we get to headlines, a few housekeeping notes. On the last show, we announced the publication of the all-new Prayers and Personal Devotions of Mother Angelica. Now, this treasure of a book hits bookstores at the top of March, but you can pre-order your copy from Amazon or through the EWTN Religious Catalog. Now, we announced a contest to celebrate the release. The first 100 people to correctly answer this question will receive a signed first edition copy of the book along with a special bookmark. The question was, what devotion to Jesus did Mother Angelica pray before entering the cloister? We've gotten more than 1,000 emails so far. Exactly one of them was correct. So I'm going to give you another hint. It is not the Stations of the Cross, but the devotion is related to the suffering of Jesus. That's all I'm going to say. Send your answers to raymond@raymondarroyo.com and include your name, address, and phone number so we can contact you should you win. All details about the book and the contest are at raymondarroyo.com. Now the brief news from the world over this week. In a major medical breakthrough that is sure to change health care for patients in a so-called vegetative state, using a new type of brain scanner, scientists in Britain and Belgium were able to detect brain activity and even communicate with patients who were considered to be in a vegetative state. The study used a brain scanner called a functional MRI. During the scan, the doctors asked the patients to think about one scenario or another that would produce different brain activity in healthy people. In 5 cases, the MRI showed brain patterns similar to that of a healthy person. In the most striking example, one patient was able to communicate with the doctors by answering simple yes and no questions. The brain scan was actually able to show the different responses. Dr. Stephen Lorraise on the breakthrough.
It opens a new era where I think we need to prepare what we're going to do with this technology. We can ask big questions here. This will have major medical, ethical, and legal impact. We need to think about how this will find its way to real life and to the clinical setting.
Amazing. The work was published on Wednesday by the New England Journal of Medicine. And what a difference a week makes in Washington. In spite of assurances of fiscal restraint last week, President Barack Obama this week released his record-setting budget proposal for the fiscal year 2011. It calls for $3.83 trillion in spending. 40% of that, or $1.5 trillion, is borrowed money. Both numbers are increases over President Obama's record 2010 budget. The much ballyhooed spending freeze the president recently proposed would amount to about $10 to $15 billion, or 0.3% savings of the entire budget. One area of federal funding that will not be frozen under the new budget is abortion. An analysis of the president's budget by Life News shows that upwards of $1 billion will likely be doled out to organizations that promote abortions. To name a few, the president has requested a continuation of taxpayer-funded abortions in the District of Columbia, a program that was launched last year by the administration. He has asked for continued funding of the UN Population Fund, which promotes abortions worldwide and works with China on their one-child policy and their forced sterilization and abortion programs. In the area of domestic family planning, which largely funds Planned Parenthood, the president has asked for a $10 million increase to more than $325 million this upcoming year. And funding for international family planning is expected to come in around $650 million. So much for taxpayer money not going toward abortions. And a new study has confirmed that abstinence-only sex education programs work. A University of Pennsylvania research team confirmed in a study released this week that a full 2/3 of those students given the abstinence-only curriculum refrained from sexual activity. More than half of those who were taught so-called safe sex programs became sexually active. In a strange bit of irony, the study was federally funded. President Obama recently defunded the government's abstinence-only program. And at the National Press Club this week, Harry Knox, a member of President Obama's Advisory Council on Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships, affirmed comments he made during Pope Benedict's visit to Africa last year, namely that the Pope's condemnation of condom use was hurting people in the name of Jesus. When asked by a CNS News reporter about a Harvard researcher who sided with the Holy Father's assertion that condom distribution was making the AIDS epidemic worse and that fidelity and abstinence programs do work, Knox said the Harvard scientist was simply wrong. Knox is neither a researcher nor a scientist. He is, however, a homosexual activist for the Human Rights Campaign and a former licensed minister of the United Methodist Church. And CNN reported this week that Cardinal Roger Mahony of Los Angeles recently faced a grueling 5-hour deposition related to the priest's sex abuse scandal in L.A. According to the report, the Cardinal Archbishop answered questions about his knowledge of abusive priests and his alleged attempts to prevent police involvement. Spokesman for the Archdiocese, Todd Tamberg, refused to answer CNN's questions in relation to the deposition until it's made public. He did, however, add that he has been told that Cardinal Mahony is not the target of the investigation. CNN reported last year that a federal grand jury investigation was launched to determine whether Cardinal Mahony violated the law in this matter. And in Rome, Pope Benedict made his strongest statement yet on marriage and annulments, repeating his plea for a more vigorous defense of the marital bond. The Holy Father told the Roman Rota, the tribunal that is ultimately responsible for deciding annulment cases, to work harder to encourage couples to stay married and not resort to granting annulments at all costs. He added that they shouldn't confuse pastoral charity in granting annulments with their need to uphold church law. In recent years, the Vatican's concern has largely been directed at the United States, which in 2006 had more annulment cases than the rest of the world combined. And the new English language mass translations could be in use throughout the English-speaking world as early as Lent of 2011. This after the Vox Clara Committee, set up to supervise the English translation of liturgical texts, met to review the latest proposed translations of the Roman Missal. The decades-plus-long English revision was completed in November when the U.S. Bishops' Conference finally approved the translation. The new translations approximate the Latin more closely and in turn are more reverent than the current Roman Missal. And a priest in Poland has found a new and innovative way to get kids to attend Mass, a fingerprint scanner. A Polish daily reports that a Father Soa has installed an electronic reader at his parish for confirmation candidates. If the pupil using the scanner attends the Mass 200 times over 3 years, he or she is excused from Father's rigorous confirmation exam. That means the youngsters have to attend every Mass on Sunday, holy days of obligation, plus an extra Mass per month. The kids think the scanner is cool. When we return, Father Tad Pacholczyk on the slow demise of embryonic stem cell research and the promise of adult stem cells. The World Over Live continues in a moment. Stay right there.